And happy Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023, and welcome to a first episode of Mental Health Awareness Month edition of what I like to call the Isolation Cabin. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, Kirk Cadet, in the flesh as always. And while I'm not a licensed therapist, I do use this platform to share my personal experiences in the hopes of helping those who are going through what I've gone through and what I am going through right now. And here on the Isolation Cabin, I do talk about one of those issues being isolation, the goods and bads that come from it, and what we can do to have a better understanding of it so we can have a better quality of life going forward. Since it is Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to start off by saying that I'm glad to see that mental health is more talked about and taken more seriously than 20 years ago, and it's good that people feel more comfortable talking about their issues and finding a way to ultimately work through them. All of us go through mental health issues in one way or another, and no matter how strong we are, they can really take a toll on us. As hard as what you're going through may be, it's important to remember this. Your mental health is no excuse to treat other people like shit. Unfortunately, many people use their mental health or whatever issues they're dealing with as an excuse to be rude, confrontational, toxic, disrespectful, and more than anything else, unpleasant. Since they're suffering and going through a hard time, they think that it's okay to take it out on others and make them have to suffer along with them. Well, guess what? That shit is not okay. Unloading all your bullshit on the rest of the world is not going to make your problems go away or make you feel any better about what you're going through in the first place. When you treat other people like shit, that's usually what ends up coming back to you. You may have the right to be angry, depressed, or even frustrated about what you're going through, but you don't have the right to take it out on people who have nothing to do with it. There are countless ways that people use their mental health to treat other people like shit, and one of them is by the way they treat their significant other. Sometimes when someone is going through a tragedy or a traumatic event, they may take their feelings out on their spouse by constantly yelling at them, picking fights with them, abusing them, and in many cases just pushing them away. If that significant other is someone who genuinely loves you, how could you ever in your life defend treating them like this? No matter what your mental health state may be, treating your partner like they're your enemy when they did nothing to you is a real shitty thing to do. And if you don't soon realize the error in that behavior, you will more than likely find yourself by yourself. Because there's only so much of that abuse and so much of that kind of treatment that another person can take. And if they've been that good to you for that long and that patient, and that's the way you pay them back, then you don't deserve them. I hate to say it, but you don't deserve them. Another area where people use their mental health as an excuse to treat other people like shit is also in the workplace. At one point or another, we've all worked with one person, whether it was a manager, whether it was a fellow employee, the boss, etc., who was just very, very hard to get along with. And more than anything, just a royal pain in the ass. They either have a bad attitude, they always criticize you, and in some cases try to get you in trouble just for their own amusement. And more often than not, the average person who behaves this way is probably dealing with a lot of heavy shit that they probably don't know how to deal with or don't want other people to see. And unfortunately, they weren't taught to deal with that heavy shit in a healthy way, so as a result, you get the version of them that you see at work every day. And while it's good to sympathize with them, you also don't have to deal with their shit, and you also don't have to put up with their shitty behavior. There's only so far your empathy can stretch for someone who constantly crosses that line. And when they cross that line one too many times, you have the right to take a stand and tell them, yo, I'm not taking that shit no more. Yeah, because when you work with a bad employee or a bad boss, it definitely puts a damper on the work environment. And from my experience, the only people who behave that way at work and do that kind of shit at work are people who are just miserable and unhappy. And because of that unhappiness and not knowing how to deal with it, they just take it out on everybody else they work with, and when it comes to the point where pretty much everybody at work has a problem with the same person, chances are the problem isn't all the other people. And like I said before, I do like to empathize. I do like to sympathize with people and understand what they're going through and have a heart in that sense. But I just can't excuse that bullshit. No matter what you're dealing with, I do not condone or excuse that bullshit under any circumstances. Shit is not right, period. And much like relationships with their spouse, another way where people use their mental health to treat other people like shit is in their relationships with their friends and also with their family members. Just like how I mentioned, people will take their issues and their anger out on their partner. A lot of people do the same thing with their close friends, with their parents, with their brother, sister, cousins, you name it. They'll also take all their baggage and all their bullshit out on them too. They could be confrontational, they could be unreasonable, and in some cases just unreliable. Where if you need a favor from them or if you need them to help you out with something, they're nowhere to be found. Or in another case, they say they're going to be there, they say they're going to do something for you, but they're nowhere to be found when the time comes. And it comes to a point where they treat us that way for that long that over time we get to a point where even though they are a family member or a friend or someone we care about, that we just can't put up with it anymore. And we shouldn't have to put up with it anymore. And it's sad to say, but people like this who behave this way tend to burn a lot of bridges and always, for some reason, seem to be wrapped up in some kind of drama or some kind of conflict. While they may have some reasons or some events that happened that made them that way, they still don't deserve to get a pass for it. No way. Yeah, they may have issues, they may have problems, but you know what? So does everybody else in the world. All of us, no matter how big, no matter how small, are all dealing with something. But even if we are, that doesn't give us the right to be an abusive piece of shit. Especially to the people who are closest to us. The people who behave this way that I described in all these different examples, the one thing all of them have in common is all of them are very emotionally immature. Some people just don't know how to handle conflicts, disagreements, or how to communicate, so whenever anything goes wrong or they don't get their way, they just fall apart. And the ways in which they fall apart is by snapping at people, throwing a tantrum, and overall just making a complete ass of themselves. And it's honestly sad. More than anything else, it is very sad to see when people turn to that kind of behavior. And it's especially sad when it's somebody that you once thought highly of. But as sad as it is though, there comes a point when you have to realize that people are old enough to be aware of their own toxic behavior. And when they refuse to change, there's not much else you can do except walk away. Which brings me to my last point about this discussion. And that last point is that it's okay to not want to keep people like this in your life anymore. As much as you should be understanding and sympathetic and have empathy and all that for someone, that doesn't mean you have to tolerate constant disrespect from them. There comes a time where even if somebody is sad, upset, depressed, or whatever it is, they still have to take responsibility for their actions, and also in this case for the poor way they treat other people. If those poor actions continue and they refuse to take any accountability for it, then you have every right to cut their ass off. Because keeping someone like that around in your life is only going to harm your own mental health. And if you feel like you've given them more than enough chances, walking away is the best decision that you could ever make. Because I hate to break it to people with those issues, with those problems, that even if your problems are real and even if your problems are legit, people don't have to put up with your shit anymore if you constantly treat them poorly and you refuse to ever apologize or try to change and try to do something about it. Because by constantly behaving that way, especially knowing that you have those kind of issues, it's clear that you're taking advantage of them and you're taking advantage of their sympathy for you. And if you keep behaving that way and you keep treating them poorly and you keep taking their empathy for granted and keep treating them like they're disposable, then don't be surprised if they don't want to put up with it anymore. And for whatever other circumstances are responsible for what you're going through or your issues, in this scenario, the only person you can point the finger at is yourself. So don't be that kind of person. Don't be that kind of person who takes advantage of people's kindness and uses their mental health issues or their personal issues to be an asshole and be a piece of shit to other people. Use your mental health as a way of empowering yourself, bettering your relationships. Because if you choose that path as opposed to the former one, you'll come out on the other side of it a survivor, a winner, and just a better version of yourself than you ever thought could ever be possible. So just remember, guys, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what anyone's going through, somebody's mental health is never an excuse to treat other people like shit. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion today about not using your mental health as a reason to be a poor excuse for a human being and a horrible person, piece of shit, etc. And like I said before, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I do use this platform to talk about issues I've dealt with and issues I know other people are dealing with and means of helping them and helping them get on the other side of them. And if you want to follow me and talk to me about these said issues, you can follow me on my various social media pages, my Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can search my first and last name, Kurt Cadet, on each of those platforms. Also, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, YouTube, as well as Spreaker. Leave a comment. Let me know what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show. And I'm going to be here for a very long time. You're not getting rid of me that easily, because I'm going to be here talking about the isolation issue, the good and bad parts of it, and what we can do to have a better handle and understanding of it for a better quality of life. So until next time, this is Kurt Cadet for another edition of the Isolation Cabin, and I will see you guys next week. God bless.